Hey everybody, it's your friend Devin Stone here, and I'm here to give you a brief introduction onto this new philosophy called Religion of One and what it means, why I think this may be the way to go, and why I feel that it is important and how it can help you. So, one of the problems with mainstream religion is it is an attempt to create a templated, one size fits all mode of behavior and spiritual alignment for everybody. And I think there was a point in time in our evolution, speaking philosophically, spiritually, consciously, not necessarily physical evolution, not necessarily in the biological sense, but in the spiritual sense, where these religions were very profound and perhaps needed. And speaking specifically in the Abrahamic sense, because that's my background where I come from, but most religions around the world tend to be very rigid, and they're revolved around the necessity to create society by enforcing a standard of conduct. So you could imagine when human beings are little more than animals and probably lived by a might makes right kind of ethos, right? So you have the alpha males. If you look at gorillas, you have silverback gorillas. The biggest, meanest male gets to boss the other males around. The females just mate with the biggest, baddest male, and that's it, right? So when you have examples of Abrahamic religion enforcing a code of conduct that respects individual right to exist in the interest of preserving a society, like thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill is a mistranslation of the original biblical Hebrew. It actually says thou shalt not murder. There's a subtext there that is what? That implies a respect for the individual human right, individual human sovereignty. So, in that regard, the religion is servicing the need of much like a parent. And when we stay on this, if you look at how we function as human beings, you can say, I got that, right? You know already, probably, if you're well aligned, if you're not morally bankrupt and maladapted, you understand that it's wrong to go initiating force on people, to aggress, to go physically aggressing upon people, to take their property, and so on. And it doesn't go much farther than that, does it? In other words, when it comes to personal happiness, when it comes to attuning or attenuating the rules of religion to fit what the individual needs, not necessarily what they want, but what they need in order to become fulfilled and happy, I think that organized religion is really a failure in this regard. A lot of people get a lot out of religion, but I think more so, people are left with crushing senses of anxiety and confusion. We're not really sure, right? What is right? What is proper? What is moral when it comes to things you may have said or done? Is it right or wrong to disobey your parents or do something that is out of the realm of what is expected of you? Because it's very easy to attach any kind of value to this play by the rules kind of moral sensibility that we internalize. We internalize and we adopt that paradigm, that value system from religion, and then anything else can hang its hat on that coat, that hat rack, whether it's secular or religious, right? The state can come in, they can impose a type of morality that people will just adopt. It could be parents. Parents could just come in and say it's kind of a sin for you to disobey us, for you to move away from us. There is a kind of a hierarchy of angels, if you will, if it's the family system, government system, and people take that template of their religious upbringing, and other people, other systems, governments, whatever, businesses can hijack that, and you can just be a slave to that for your whole life. So there are problems with this, and this is where we need to establish a departure from what has become a very popular solution, quote unquote, in libertarian realms. Ayn Rand, if you're looking at the Randian school of objectivism, that's Ayn Rand, Stefan Molyneux, people who are in that camp, the Randian camp. They recognize this, right? So they notice that, well, what people tend to do is they tend to take their internalized value systems that they got from patriarchal organized religion, and the state just hijacks that and they worship the state. And they're correct to point that out, right? So they notice that even the earliest governments, biggest governments, if you're looking at ancient Egypt, Rome, going into as late as the Renaissance, into England and so on, the king claims to be divine. I'm a special person. That's why I get to boss you around, right? Only later do we have a secular government, democracy, and so on. And this is worshipped. It's just worshipped in a secular fashion, really, right? The only difference is in, let's say, the United States, when you have freedom of religion, what the state is basically saying is, well, we don't care who you worship on or how you worship on an esoteric level, because what's really important is who you worship in action. And we all know who the God is, who the boss is in action, and it's secular, elective, call it that, religion, which is full of corruption and very detrimental to human liberty and happiness. So long-winded, long-winded preface there, but basically what the libertarians got wrong is that they said that, well, religion and spirituality needs to go. Anything of that, in that line of thinking that revolves around anything irrational needs to go, because otherwise you're going to wind up in the same boat. And the problem, there are huge problems with that, right? Like, how could you possibly deposit that living in a free society is good? How do you propose that happiness is preferable or freedom is preferable to tyranny, unless there's some guiding principle of what is moral or just or right in a region that transcends the physical and transcends the rational? This is a huge problem with Stefan Molyneux tried to do this. He tried to come up with this thing he called UPB, universally preferable behavior, which is total nonsense. If you look at human history, treating other people well, obeying the libertarian non-aggression principle, preferring liberty over tyranny, that has not been the norm. The norm has been big fish eat the little fish, domination, establishing rigid systems of control, things passed off as morally wrong when they're really kind of inert, like an individual's choice to use drugs or certain sexual choices or lifestyles and things like that. So he really struggled with, and the Reindian camp, they I think were right to criticize the rigid enforcement of religion as a blanket template for how to manage society and how it can be detrimental to individuals. They were correct to point out that secular religion is just kind of filling that void in the human psyche. But then they went on to say, well, the only way to solve this is to be an outright atheist, which has huge problems, because there would be no way to assert that one value is preferable on an ethical basis than another from strict rationality. Rationality can't tell you why. Why would it be wrong to kill 1 million people to service an end, XYZ, right? It can't tell you that. It's a felt, moral sensibility is a felt thing. We get that from our spiritual alignment. So we need a better solution that takes into account what has been established in our earlier spiritual evolution by the religions of the world, which are that, okay, well, we know and we understand that we need to evolve past the might makes right hierarchy in animal kingdoms. We need respect for individual life, but we need to graduate from that, because there are questions that are higher up on, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which this work is partially based on, we need to address matters of the individual alignment, which might be the same or different than what's proposed to us or enforced by mainstream religion. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me give you an example. do whatever you want. Is that a solution to this problem? No, because we know that you might want to do things that are 180 degrees around from what you need. I might want to eat Oreo cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I might be able to rationalize that. I might be able to say, well, there's no problem with this because it's just calories in, calories out, and it's there. It fits the calorie model for less than my BMR, my basal metabolic rate, so I should be losing weight. But then I feel sick, I feel lethargic, I feel the blood sugar crash, and I'm not losing weight, or maybe I'm gaining a little bit of weight. So what is going on there? What's going on there is a system in me that might be different than yours. There's a system in me that transcends the rational. It's my body. My body is reacting in a way that doesn't care what I want or what I think. So right there, we have an example of a personal alignment that transcends rationality and transcends what I want. It's just what I need. So if I do an investigation, which you all should do when it comes to, let's say, physical health, and I know that if paleo diet, that's kind of what I'm on, and on the paleo diet, I feel better, I have fewer inflammation symptoms, or some have completely abated, and I'm losing body fat. This physical health is telling me what I need, and it doesn't care about what I want. So, long story short, every person has a personal alignment, if you're willing to accept that on the physical level. And the same thing is true on the spiritual level when it comes to life meaning. What do I mean by spirituality? Well, it's meaning, direction, purpose that transcends the physical and the rational. That's what we could call spiritual. So you can't necessarily see it. You can't necessarily put it in a test tube and measure it because it transcends those things. It informs the existence of the material, of the mental, and of the emotional is spiritual. It's the meaning that transcends what is immediately observable or perceivable by the five senses. So we need a religion of one. We need a personal religion that is attuned to the individual, that may be just as rigid, just as unforgiving as an Abrahamic religion with very harsh rules, a very legalistic religion, but it's attuned to you and what you need to suit your betterment and your ultimate happiness, including what I call vocational alignment, which is probably the existential crisis of our age, is what do I do with my life? You have to understand, this is a higher order question. This assumes that your baseline material needs are more or less met, right? So you may have a job that you really hate, but you're not going to starve to death. You may not like how you live. You may be living, you may have roommates in a crappy apartment somewhere. Your car might be crummy, or you might not even have a car. But we're assuming that once you establish that, we're not out of the woods yet. We are now looking at a different kind of pain. Mark Maron calls it, the comedian calls it thinky pain. We don't know who we are. It's not enough to just say we have a job and I'm not starving to death. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to do what I do in life and have that be a reflection of who I am. I want to be happy. And as I said, organized religion isn't really equipped to resolve or to answer these problems because it's there to create conformity and uniform rules for huge batch numbers of people so that we don't regress back into primitives. And I'm here to say, well, I think we can check that box. We've got that covered. We know it's wrong, morally wrong, to what? 10 Commandments, right? So this is a problem that I saw in being raised in these religions, is that they tend to just kind of sit around and worship the rules all day. It doesn't really get to progress, and it can't be that boilerplate, because then we can't have huge mega church structures and religions and things. It would be more of like coaching for an individual person. And what's really tricky about this is individuals are complex. The most complex thing that we know of in the known universe is the human being. Okay, Homo sapien. That's the most complex thing that we know of in the universe. Just on a physical level, because our brains are the most complex brains on the planet. Therefore, we're the most complex thing that we know. And it's really tough to give blanket level rules that are going to apply to everyone. Everybody's personal spiritual alignment is going to be different. Their vocational alignment is going to be different. And all I can really offer are principles. We can't say this is right, this is wrong. That might be right for 99%, but what about the 1% that's an outliner? Organized religion, mass society, just says that's a worthy sacrifice, screw them, we don't care, because we only care about preserving some system for the whole of civilization, and that's just totally backwards. All you really need to preserve civilization is this baseline stuff. Libertarian non-aggression principle. That's it. Above and beyond that, the state is just getting in the way. It's just somebody else. How could you possibly know? How could anybody else possibly know? So on my example, the Oreo cookies, this is where we get it wrong. I think this is a good analogy for the nanny state, right? Because the nanny state could come in and say, oh, well, I'll solve this problem for everyone. We'll just ban sugar. There, we'll ban Oreo cookies. Well, it is out of my alignment to eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but should I be barred from having it ever? Like, I'm not an adult. I can't regulate that behavior. I can't have Oreo cookies once a quarter of a year, once a year. The state doesn't know, right? Just because you as a person are struggling to find your spiritual alignment or your vocational alignment or your alignment with diet doesn't mean that some know-it-all knows what it is for you and should feel confident with forcing upon you this ninnying parental attitude. So really, I keep coming back to this, right? Religion of One is about being a spiritual adult. It's about taking responsibility for this alignment yourself, because nobody else could really know what it is. Here's the challenge. You could have literally two people doing the exact same thing. Person A is a stockbroker. Person B is a stockbroker. Person A, that may be what they've dreamed of being since they were 5 years old. So they're perfectly happy doing it. They couldn't imagine doing anything else. And retirement isn't even on their mind. I think if you're in your spiritual alignment for what you do for a living, what you do for money, that's a critical choice in this philosophy, this Religion of One philosophy, because you need to have your material needs met, and in the world we live in, that's done with money. And if you just can't wait to retire and so that you can do nothing or stop doing what you're doing, then you're doing the wrong thing. So person A can't imagine not being a stockbroker. That's great. Person B doing the same thing as a stockbroker, but did it because they read it was a good career. They did it for money, but they don't love it. They did it because some relative told them it was a good thing to do, and they're miserable, burned out, can't wait to retire, hate themselves, hate life, think of killing themselves all the time. You couldn't possibly write a prescription, which people of this mindset, they're not necessarily religious in the literal sense, but there are people of this mindset who want to impose a conformist doctrine and attach a moral sensibility to it, like it's good to do X. And someone in a position that person B respects might say, yeah, but it's good because look at the benefits, look at the money you're making. Are you crazy? It's a great job. It's a great career. It's, tribal elder type thinking. It's templated thinking. It doesn't mean anything to the individual alignment. So to propose a principle, like how would Religion of One propose to solve this problem, is to do a lot of introspection, to write down, if person B needs to, how miserable they are, pay attention to those forces in him that are contradicting or transcending his rational understanding of what he's doing, because we know that the mind can trick the ego into accepting or believing all kinds of things that are out of his individual alignments. I really feel fatigued. That's a good pointer. I don't feel excited. I feel burned out. On the rational level, I can't wait to retire. I have a clock in my head, just 10 more years, and then I'll be able to retire. Vocational alignment is a central tenet of religion of one, because we have a presupposition that we are not meant to just do nothing for extended periods of time. Of course, there are times in life where you have to rest and do nothing, but we're meant to do things that are meaningful for us, and it's very important to discover what that is. But what religion is going to tell this person, stop being a stockbroker? Where is that in any canon? Where is that in any doctrine, in the good book? Like where is that? It's not there. It's not written for him. So everything is very do this, do that, follow this rule, follow that rule. There's not a lot in there. There's some hints at personal happiness and fulfillment. There are some little snippets in there that you can find. They're few and far between, because that's really not the focus, and you're in a way you kind of be hard pressed to find something in there that speaks to the individual on this profound level. So maybe they'll go find a guru. Okay. Well, in the Eastern systems, one of the problems that I have with the Eastern systems is they're very dismissive of this notion of human action at all. They just say, just don't do that. It doesn't matter. So that's the solution is it doesn't matter what you do. The physical life is just Maya, or it doesn't really matter. Just focus on God, do these practices, and it's might be a good medicine, might alleviate the pain for a while. But typically speaking, they do not regard what we do for money as of any significance at all. One guru, Kriyananda. So Kriyananda was a student of Yogananda from Self-Realization Fellowship. He broke off. He went to do his own thing. Very good teacher. I liked a lot of what he had to say, but he kept saying, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. That's not very comforting to those of us that have to slave away at a job that we're not fulfilled in. So in Religion of One, we endorse these alignment activities, the prayer, the meditation, practices of yoga, but the aim is different. The aim is to get out of your own way. The aim is to find the alignment so that you know what to do. And that's just a practice so that you can get stronger, so that you can feel spiritually aligned, which is going to be different for each person, so that you can go do the thing. Not so you can make that, unless that is your alignment. See, this is really tough, right? How are we going to prescribe what is or is not in an individual's alignment? We don't know. It might be your alignment to be living in that ashram, doing that and nothing else. There's lots of people like that, right? God bless them. But in my view, a lot of these gurus, teachers of yoga, they make the same mistake. They're going to take this templated way of thinking, what's right for everyone. They'll say, we don't care what you do for work, do that. And then, of course, it's also eat this, eat that, do this, do that, don't act that way, right? So that's in it in a nutshell. It is not either of these extremes. On one extreme, we have a religion with legalism. Do this, do that, don't. And a lot of it makes sense, and a good amount of it does not make sense. A lot of it is just meaningless prohibition, right? So, example, I was raised Jewish. A lot of legalism in Judaism. I like the Ten Commandments. That makes sense. A lot of that is pretty well aligned with a non-aggression principle, but there are prohibitions on there against tattoos. As you can see, I have tattoos because that rule doesn't make sense to me. And rabbis wrote that rule later. That was much, much after the founding of the Ten Commandments, right? So if you're not going to tell me why, if it doesn't make sense to me, then I don't feel the need to follow the rule. And so there's one extreme is religious legalism or moral legalism, and then on the other extreme is what you have today, which is hedonism. I do whatever I want. That's this whole death of God thing. If there is no aligning principle, then we're all just animals anyway, and we can just be hedonistic. We can do whatever we want. It I gave you the Oreo cookie example, but you could transfer that over to alcohol, sloth, overwork, not doing anything, running around, entertaining all kinds of flight and fancy for money. It could be various sexual behaviors or things like that. And we know that that does not produce meaning for individuals. So, what's the solution? The solution is to understand, first of all, that religion is meant to be interpreted on a logos level, on a what we call the mythosphere. It's a meta narrative, not a history, for one, and two, to discover the individual personal alignment, which is a spiritual alignment. You don't just throw the notion of spiritual alignment out. You don't throw that completely away just because a templated boilerplate religion doesn't fit you and say, therefore, there is no such thing. Therefore, we're just mammals and we're all the same and I can do whatever I want. No, you have an alignment and it's up to you. It's your responsibility, according to Religion of One. This philosophy says that you have to discover what that is and obey it so that you can live your happiest, best life. And that may involve a lot of discipline. It might be 180 degrees around from what you want or what you think you want or what your ego is asserting or what Eckhart Tolle calls your pain body is driving you to do. So there's a lot of personal work involved. I hope this helps. Let me know what you think and have a great day.